God, so fucking tired. I've been pretty busy lately, as you can imagine, so I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to pick something that'll only require about half of my attention.
Believe it or not, I'm walking on air. I never thought I could feel so free. Flying away on a wing and a prayer. Who could it be? Believe it or not, it's just me.
Oh, really? I didn't know that was gonna be the movie. That makes my previous comment sound really insensitive.
What? You've never seen Terror of Tiny Town? Oh, come on, it's one of a kind. Literally. It's a 1938 film that is the world's only Western featuring an entire cast of little people.
Just in case you were alive in '38 and couldn't afford to go to the circus.
Since its release, the film has become somewhat of a cult classic, mainly for its cast, and it was also listed in Harry and Michael Medved's book on the worst films of all time.
Though it's Michael Medved that we're talking about, so he probably hated it because he thought it was anti-Christian propaganda.
The idea for a Western of this, stature must have been so foreign to the 1930s audience that they needed an announcer to introduce the concept to them.
Ladies and gentlemen and children of all ages, we're going to present for your approval a novelty picture with an all-midget cast, the first of its kind ever to be produced.
I don't approve.
I'm told that it has everything. That is, everything that a Western should have.
Yes, so he's told it contains everything from previous Westerns. Except,
Things get a little rowdy, though, when both the hero and the villain join the announcer on stage.
Well, who are you?
I'm the villain. Who did that?
I did. What are you gonna do?
Okay, before I start hating myself too much, let's get this thing started. Terror of Tiny Town, starring an excuse me, they prefer to be called an all-sucker cast? That's the most dignified way I've ever seen the word midget written in my life. Let's see, the hero, the girl, what? The characters don't even have fucking names?
They got so ahead of themselves in concept that they couldn't name their leads. If I wanted that, I'd stick with The Road, thank you very much.
And if any of these illustrations are correct, apparently there's a scene where one of them fucks a cow. Tiny Town seems like a happy enough place. Not exactly sure what they're doing here, but they're singing, and this wheel is being pounded into submission. I may not know the characters' names, but judging by what they're riding on, looks like they're at least bronies. Although if this is Tiny Town, then why is this door so big? Who in this town needs a door of that size?
This movie has already contradicted itself.
Mayhem ensues when the hero happens upon the villains trying to steal some cattle. The competing cattle rancher is Tiny Harry Dean Stanton here, and the villain blames the cow tipping on the hero. Again, is there a need for a fence this tall?
You would think, of all places, that Tiny Town would be tiny capable.
Uh-oh, here comes the chef to tell him his soup doesn't have enough whimsy.
But it's got enough slapstick.
Oh, come on, leave the duck alone. He's just trying to sell you some insurance. Try not to get too silly there, movie. The villain might be right around the corner.
Menacing.
Judging by the sizes of the buildings, I'm guessing that Tiny Town used to be inhabited by tall people, but then they were killed and eaten by the current, now smaller residents of the town.
That'd make for a far more interesting movie. It'd still be terrible, but it would explain the size of the fucking doors.
Or maybe the producers just thought it would be funny to see them walk under the saloon doors. Oh great, Toddlers and Tiaras was just as off-putting in the 1930s.
You better look out. Hey, look
this movie made for?
Best listen closely, though, or you won't understand the villain's devious plot to pit cattle rancher against cattle rancher.
I'm grabbing myself a nice bunch of cattle from both sides, and each one blames the other.
So, you know, it's like if Yojimbo was about cows, and really fucking stupid.
This guy is wearing so much mascara, he could very well be a ninja. Oh, come on, the dude can't even step onto a porch. This town is really inconvenient. They could break their ankle just stepping outside. But if they decide to get a nice, clean shave, at least they can have a soothing song sung to them by the Tiny Jack the Ripper trio.
The hell was that? I thought I was the shortest person with a sexy voice.
Can you imagine if the sinful dwarf was in this movie? So many people would be getting fucked with a cane right now. But it's a western, so more appropriate to rob a stagecoach instead.
Careful there, boys. You're gonna shoot someone's eye out with those things.
I think the music wants us to think that this is intense, but it's really not. Whew, that was close. He saved her from crashing into tiny Clayton Ravine. After the robbery goes south, the villains retreat to their lair to play Spin the Bottle?
Loser has to fuck the guy in the Nuki costume.
Not before more hijinks with the Swedish half-chef, though. Hey, you know what would make this shelf easier to use? Moving it closer to the ground.
What would you like to eat? Oh, a half a dozen sandwiches, some boiled eggs and pickles. Where you going to put all that? In my saddlebag.
I get it. She eats so much, yet she's so little.
I don't know why, but for some reason I would find this funnier if he were writing Yoshi. Wait, oh no, is he gonna start? Yep, he is.
For I'll sing my song as we ride along.
The day Eddie Cantor's singing voice sounds like Vern Troyer, then I'll believe this wasn't dubbed.
This movie is like Love Me Tender if it took place at the worst Elvis convention ever.
When we get up on the hill, where all is quiet and still.
Now that voice, I believe, isn't dubbed.
Did you really like it?
Why, certainly. That is, all but the finish. The part about the wedding?
Oh, I see. A woman hater.
A woman hater? She thinks he's one of the little rascals? Well, now that's just mean.
Of course, after exchanging 2 words, a romance begins to blossom between these two, but their love is forbidden because they each belong to the competing cattle ranch families, and are you fucking serious with this plot?
They lied to me about this being the only one of its kind. Apparently, it was later remade as Romeo and Juliet.
The villain tattles on this taboo romance, and wait, I'm sorry, was that guy just randomly waiting outside for some plot elements to run right up to him? Well, just like a true Western, these two enemies ruthlessly talk out their differences.
If you'd only meet Dad halfway, I know he'd be reasonable.
Buck, you sound honest to me, and I believe you're talking horse sense.
I'm glad you see it my way, Tex.
Jesus, someone shoot someone, please! Thank you. At least the villain knows it's a Western.
Our hero gets blamed for the murder of the rancher, but forget that. It's time for another musical number. Oh, please tell me that's not supposed to be a violin. This movie's idea filler is watching this guy chug a beer not once, but twice. At least now we know how Ralphus was created. The hero tries to smooth things over with this girl, but they must have ran out of tiny guns, so Dirty Harry Callahan's will work. Don't worry, the gun will break every bone in her hand before the bullet comes out. After pleading his innocence with her, he's soon arrested by the sheriff, although not before giving the villain a piece of his mind.
Hold on, Buck. I'm arresting you for murder.
And who say so?
Bad Haynes.
Yikes, the bitch slap heard around the saloon.
With the hero out of the way, it's now the villain's chance to put on the old villachese.
What's the matter with me as a husband? Why, someday I'll be the biggest man in this county.
I know there's a joke in there somewhere. I know there is, but I wouldn't want to offend some tall guy who thinks that little people would get offended.
Hey, what are you doing? You're supposed to walk under the doors! That's what the producers of the movie find funny! The villain's rejection makes him so mad that he actually gets down from his bar step and...
What if I told this Scout what I know about you?
Punching a hooker. A language that is spoken in every size.
The scene would have been a lot more dramatic if you couldn't see the bar step in the background. The hero comes up with a plan to save himself from the noose.
There's nothing to worry about. They can't convict me of something I never did.
I don't know if that's true, Tiny Hurricane.
Anyway, he assembles together his posse, who come with guns and dignity.
Really? You know, I'm sure there were some smaller steps off to the side.
When the sheriff declares the hero to be innocent, the only thing the villain can do is hide in this chimney. Does he want Santa to take him back home or something? Enough of that nonsense. Let's get to the climatic fight scene that's thrown in here.
This scene demands sillier music.
Luckily, once their fists are worn out, there's some dynamite left to finish the job.
Pieces of him were spread over about 5 or 6 feet.
And that's the end of Terror of Tiny Town.
This movie clocks in at only 60 minutes long. Is there anything about this movie that isn't short?
Hi. Oh, hey, Mr. Snob. Oh. Sorry, I was just tying my shoe.
Okay,
Got your mail over my place again by accident.
thanks.
Hey, Travis Crabtree, do you see what I see on the gentle winds of morning?
Well, is it really one of the worst films ever made?
You can certainly get a lot of tasteless jokes out of it, but worst movie...
It's just a lame western about competing cattle ranchers. The only reason this thing is memorable, and why critics go after it so much, is just because of the cast. And that's racist. Not racist. Sexist? No, not sexist. Dwarfist. Dwarfist and sizist. I believe that's it.
And as a cinema snob, I prefer my westerns John Wayne-ier and my little people to be Peter Dinklage. And as far as Terror of Tiny Town goes, I think we can all agree that there was only one terror in this town, and that was a fucking porch!
A boy's hearts are lonely, sad as a coyote's wail, but I am never...